Marcus Kingston watched the red and blue lights pulse against the polished black iron of his own gate. He pressed his hand against his chest, feeling his heart thumped like a warning drum. The Maybach idled behind him, engine rumbling as if impatient. He had spent years building this house. The soaring white columns, the wide mahogany doors, the Rotterdam railings wrapped in jasmine. Tonight, he stood before it like a stranger. The two officers stepped forward, their faces stern behind the harsh glare of their flashlights. Marcus swallowed. He knew his rights. He knew the law. Yet in their eyes, he saw doubt flicker, turn quickly into suspicion. "Sir," one officer said, voice thick with authority, "we need to see some ID. This area is under extra security." "Tonight?" Marcus lifted his chin, lips pressed tight. He reached inside his jacket for his wallet. Rain began to fall in slender threads, pattering on the driveway. Marcus's mother had called earlier, worried he might work too late. He smiled at her voice, soft and reassuring, but now the rain soaked him through, cold creeping into his bones. He offered his license through the narrow gate. The officer flicked through it like a child paging a forbidden book. Every second felt like a minute. Every breath felt heavy with history. Memories flooded him, times when he was pulled from his car in a rough neighborhood. Hands pressed against the hood, cold metal digging into his skin. At times when he saw friends treated as suspects for no other reason than the color of their skin. Tonight at his own home, the same fear rose in his chest. He swallowed again, steadying himself. He cleared his throat. "This is my home. I live here." His voice was quiet but firm. The second officer glanced at him, brow furrowed. He leaned closer, flashlight slicing across Marcus's face. "Sir, you understand why we're asking. There have been reports of a stolen vehicle matching your car." Marcus bit his lip. His car had custom plates, a unique VIN. Anyone could verify that with a phone call. Yet the officers stayed silent, eyes fixed on him, minds already made up. Thunder rumbled overhead. Lightning split the sky, the flash illuminating Marcus's estate in stark relief. He saw the contours of his garden, the tall palms, the fountain where he had proposed to his wife years ago. His chest tightened. This place held his dreams, his memories, his family. He took a breath. He would not let fear steal his peace tonight. The first officer finally spoke into his radio, asking for confirmation. Marcus watched the seconds stretch. His fingers curled into fists. He felt anger rise but pushed it down, breathing through the ache in his throat. He reminded himself of patience, of calm. But inside, the ember of resolve glowed brighter than the storm above. A distant bark broke. His thoughts, his dog, Max, on the porch. The animal's urgent cry seemed to stir something in Marcus. He pressed his hands against his sides and straightened his shoulders. He would claim what was his. He would not bow to injustice. He would stand tall, no matter how the rain lashed against him. When the radio crackled and the officer finally lowered his flashlight, Marcus prepared to speak again. He would demand respect. He would remind them that he was not a suspect, but a citizen. He would neither plead nor cower. Tonight he would show them that strength could come wrapped in calm words, dignity, and firm belief in one's own truth. And so he waited, rain dripping off his hair, ready to fight for his right. To walk through his own gate. Marcus stepped back from the gate, rain soaking through his jacket. The officer's private security guards in uniform lowered their flashlights and exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus's pulse still thundered in his ears, but he held his ground. He watched them for a long moment, feeling the weight of every memory he had of injustice. Then he turned on his heel and walked briskly down the driveway toward the grand entrance of his mansion. Each heavy footstep thudded against the wet stone, echoing his anger and resolve. Inside the foyer, warm light and deep wood panels surrounded him. He paused for a breath, letting the sound of the front door closing behind him seal him away from fear. His wife Alina met him at the base of the sweeping staircase. Her eyes were wide with concern as she sank into his arms. He pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he dialed the number for his company's security director, David, Aku said, voice low but firm. You need to unlock the gate, and we need to talk. Right now. He felt Elena's hand slip into his, offering a small anchor of calm. Within seconds, he heard the click of the gate outside. The two officers stood back as the iron doors swung open, revealing the empty street. Marcus ignored the guards now and followed David's instructions, climbing the stairs to his home office. The office smelled of leather and old books. Rain drummed softly against the tall windows. Marcus set his phone down and called a meeting on his company's internal messaging system. His security firm, Kingston Protective Services, provided guards for private estates all over the region. Those guards at his gate were his own employees, and tonight they had treated him as a suspect. He clenched his jaw. Kindness and courtesy were core values of his firm, and those values had been betrayed. Minutes later, David appeared at the door. He was a calm man, but his face was ashen. "Marcus, I saw what happened. I'm sorry." Marcus nodded once, then slid his laptop toward David. "Review this roster," he said. "Every guard who responded to my estate tonight, terminate them, effective immediately. Then call the rest of the team and let them know we're replacing them all. I want full report by morning." David swallowed, but he knew better than to argue. He tapped his phone and left the room. Elena stood quietly by the window, watching heavy clouds drift past. Marcus sank into his chair, head in his hands. The anger that had boiled in him minutes ago now settled into an ache. He thought of the fear in his own chest when those guards refused to believe he belonged in his own home. He thought of every person of color who had stood in front of a door, hand outstretched, begging to be seen as human. Tonight, he had fought back end. Now he would fight for change. An hour later, Marcus met David again in the conference room. The table was strewn with documents, guard rosters, contract details, termination notices. Beyond the large windows, the gate stood open, waiting for a new guard team. David walked Marcus through the list. "We've informed the terminated guards by text and email," he said. "We've also paid out their final wages and benefits. New hires arrive tomorrow." Marcus nodded. He wanted something more than just replacements. He wanted a team that understood respect. He tapped his phone to call two local security firms owned by Black veterans. He had met their founders at a community luncheon last year. Their commitment to dignity and service had impressed him. "I need 5 guards on site by dawn," Marcus said, when the first owner answered. "They will be my personal security team. No exceptions." The man's voice brightened. "Consider it done, Mr. Kingston." After the calls ended, Marcus exhaled. The burden in his chest loosened slightly. Elena leaned in and kissed his cheek. "You did the right thing," she said softly. He looked at her, eyes wet with fatigue and relief. "I couldn't let it stand," he whispered. Outside, the storm finally began to ease. The garden lights flickered on, and the jasmine petals glistened with droplets. In that moment, Marcus felt a flicker of hope that respect could be restored, that change could begin at his own gate. Marcus woke before dawn, his mind still heavy from the night's work. Through the tall office windows, he saw the first pale light slip into the sky. On his phone, dozens of messages blinked. News outlets covering his decision, colleagues asking questions, and neighbors offering support. His heart beat fast, part pride, part worry. He had fired his own guards, an act of justice, but also a bold move that could bring trouble. He folded his hands on the desk and took a steadying breath, determined to face whatever came next. An hour later, Marcus sat at the long boardroom table with his executive team. CEO's chair still smelled of leather and late-night meetings. Around him, people cleared their throats, eyes flicking between Marcus and the blank screen at the front. Finally, the company lawyer spoke. "Marcus, this decision has legal and financial impact. Our shareholders are concerned." Marcus looked at each of them, calm but firm. "I understand. But respect is not optional. We built this firm on trust and honor. If we betray our own values, what are we worth?" Silence filled the room. Then one board member nodded slowly. Another cleared her throat and said, "We will support you. But we need a clear plan." Marcus smiled faintly. He had expected resistance, but he also believed that true leadership showed in hard choices. I want to go beyond replacing guards, he said. I want to teach every person here what respect really means. We'll host a day of open doors. We invite our staff, clients, and neighbors to our estate. We will listen, learn, and share. The room brightened as heads nodded in agreement. After the meeting, Marcus stood in his childhood bedroom, now converted into a quiet study. On the wall, a faded photograph showed him at 10 years old, beaming beside his father. He remembered how his father taught him to always hold his head high, even when the world tried to knock him down. He remembered his mother's gentle voice, telling him that kindness can change hearts. Those lessons rose in him now, giving him courage and clarity. He vowed to honor their memory by making his home a place of learning and unity. By late morning, Alina joined him in the sunlit garden. White chairs stood in neat rows on the lawn, and a small stage waited under a canopy of jasmine. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Will they come?" she asked softly. Marcus looked around at the trimmed hedges and the fountain's clear water. "They will," he said. "People want to heal. They want to feel seen." He turned to David, who was reviewing the guest list. "Have you sent invitations to local schools and community groups?" David nodded. "Yes, sir. They arrived by courier today." During the afternoon, staff buzzed with activity. Chefs tested trays of pastries and local musicians practiced. Soft tunes under the trees. Marcus walked among them, greeting each person by name. He felt a lightness in the air, as if the storm had passed, and new energy flowed in. He paused beside a group of young recruits, new guards, who had signed on after hearing his story. Their faces shone with pride. They believed in the firm's values now, not just the paycheck. Marcus smiled at them, heartwarming. As evening fell, lanterns lit the pathway, and neighbors began to arrive. Families stepped through the open gate without fear. Children's laughter drifted across the lawn as the youngest guests chased fireflies. Marcus stood by the entrance, greeting each person with a nod and a smile. He saw hope in their eyes, the hope that change could start with one action, one decision. He felt his own hope grow stronger. Later on the small stage, Marcus stood before the crowd, his wife by his side. He spoke with quiet passion. "Tonight we show that respect is our true shield. We prove that justice can begin at our own doors. May we all carry this lesson into every day." Applause rippled through the gathering, warm and earnest. As he looked out at the faces around him, Marcus felt a deep, shining peace. He knew this was only the beginning, but it was a powerful start to hand. His heart swelled with the promise of better days. The morning after the open-door gathering, Marcus woke to sunlight dancing through the tall windows of his bedroom. He stretched and felt a gentle hope settle in his chest. Yesterday's event had been a success, but he knew real change would take time. He dressed quickly and made his way downstairs, where the scent of fresh coffee guided him to the kitchen. Alina smiled from behind the counter. Pouring 2 mugs, they carried their cups outside to the veranda, where the garden lay quiet in the soft light. Marcus cradled his coffee, remembering the laughter of children chasing fireflies only hours before. He told Alina, "Today, we begin the real work." She nodded, eyes bright with shared purpose. They spoke of plans to host workshops on respect and bias for their staff, neighbors, and anyone who would come. By mid-morning, the mansion hummed with activity again. In the grand living room, rows of chairs faced a simple stage. A projector stood ready, its screen blank until the first speaker arrived. Marcus watched as neighbors filtered in, teachers, small business owners, local officials, and residents who had once feared these gates. He greeted each person with warm firmness, grateful for their presence. He felt that old drumbeat in his heart, but it was no longer fear, it was resolve. The first presenter was Dr. Rivera, a psychologist who worked with communities affected by discrimination. She spoke in clear, gentle English about how bias can grow unseen like weeds in a garden. She invited everyone to share a moment when they felt judged and to listen without interrupting. Hands rose slowly, voices trembled, and the room filled with quiet honesty. Marcus sat to the side, proud of the safe space being created in a house that had once been a scene of conflict. After the session, participants formed small circles in the adjacent ballroom. Marcus and Alina moved among them, listening. A mother from down the street spoke of her son's fear every time police cars drove by. A retired officer admitted he had acted on assumptions too quickly in his own career. Tears welled in many eyes, but they were tears of relief and understanding. Marcus felt his own tears threaten, but he breathed deeply and kept walking, offering nods and kind words. In the afternoon, Marcus invited his new security team veterans who had agreed to guard the estate to join the final workshop. These men and women, some with military tattoos peeking from their sleeves, spoke of discipline and duty. They promised to uphold dignity in every action. One young guard, Private Allen, said softly, "I will see every person as a human first." His words echoed in the room like a promise, carrying more power than any guard instruction manual. Alina had asked local artists to paint a mural in the foyer during the day. As the sun set, Marcus and the guests gathered to unveil it. Bright colors formed the shape of an open gate, with figures of all ages emerging into sunlight. At the bottom, in simple script, were the words, "Here, all are welcome," fell over the crowd, followed by soft applause. Marcus's heart swelled to see a visual testament to their shared work. That evening, Marcus and Alina stood together at the gate once more. It was quiet now, lanterns glowing gently. The new guards walked their posts with respectful attention, greeting passers-by with polite nods. Marcus realized that this simple act, opening and protecting these gates with care, had become a symbol of a larger promise to his community. He took Alina's hand and squeezed it, though the journey ahead would not be easy. He felt in his bones that they had built something strong here, a bridge of trust between a home and its city, between fear and understanding. As the last light faded, Marcus whispered to the night, "We will keep going." Alina leaned against him, and together they watched the open gate stand firm, ready to welcome anyone willing to learn. In that moment, hope felt as real as the warm earth beneath. Their feet and Marcus knew that this hope would guide them through whatever tomorrow might bring. The next morning, Marcus woke to the soft chirp of his phone. His eyes widened as he read messages of praise and then saw one from a local blogger, called his actions showy and unwelcome. A knot formed in his stomach, he had imagined. Challenges, but not this. He slipped out of bed and dressed in quiet determination, reminding himself that real change often stirred both support and doubt. He would face this with the same calm resolve he had shown before. Downstairs, Alina poured coffee and placed it by his laptop. Marcus sat at the kitchen island, reading the blogger's post again. The writer claimed that opening the gates had let just anyone into a private home and questioned Marcus's motives. Marcus felt a pang of hurt thinking of every neighbor who had joined his workshops with open hearts. Took a deep breath and told Alina, "I need to hear them too. I can't ignore them." She nodded in support, her eyes kind. By mid-morning, Marcus stood at the garden gate, watching as a small crowd gathered across the street. They held handmade signs, some welcoming, others asking, "Who really benefits?" His new guards formed a respectful line behind him, their posture firm, but gentle. He stepped onto the driveway and raised a hand. "Good morning," he called in a steady voice. "I see you have questions. I'm here to answer them." The crowd's murmur grew. A woman in a bright scarf stepped forward. "We appreciate what you did for some," she said, voice shaking. "But what about those of us who never get invited? We feel left out." Marcus listened closely, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that his open door event had drawn in those already connected, but left others uncertain. He thanked her for speaking and invited the whole group inside for tea and conversation. Some exchanged surprised looks. Others hesitated. Inside the foyer, Alina led them to the sunlit living room. Marcus offered tea and coffee and homemade pastries from his kitchen. The mood softened as people sipped and shared stories. Young father spoke of working 2 jobs and never finding time for community events. A teacher admitted she never knew his name until now. Marcus listened and learned. With each story, he saw that goodwill needed careful tending. It's not just grand gestures. After an hour, the group moved to the garden. Children chased butterflies, drawing laughter from even the sternest faces. Marcus knelt to speak with the little ones, asking their names and dreams. A shy boy told him he wanted to be an artist. Marcus showed him space on the garden wall for a future mural. The boy's grin was bright enough to light the whole lawn. Marcus felt hope rekindle in his chest. By late afternoon, the blogger arrived, camera in hand. He hesitated at the gate, then stepped forward. Marcus greeted him with a courteous bow. "Thank you for coming," he said. The blogger admitted he had expected anger but found kindness instead. He joined the circle of neighbors, listened, and asked questions. When he left, he promised to write about what he saw: people learning, children smiling, walls becoming canvases of shared hope. As dusk settled out, Marcus stood alone by the mural of the open gate. Ta-ta! He touched the bright paint where the boy would soon add his art. He thought of the woman in the scarf, the blogger, and every person who had crossed his threshold, willing or wary. He realized that true inclusion meant inviting dialogue even when it stung. He felt tired but proud. Tonight he would rest, knowing he had faced doubt with openness and turned strangers into neighbors. And in the quiet glow of his garden lights, he whispered to himself, "We are only beginning." The next morning, Marcus walked through the quiet halls of his mansion before sunrise. He paused at the portrait of his late father and drew a steady breath. Today would be the first day of the community apprenticeship program he had promised. He wore a crisp shirt and simple trousers, determined that work alone could heal the wound left by doubt. Outside in the courtyard, tables stood ready with tools, paint, and garden seeds. A group of teenagers arrived, some from Marcus's neighborhood, others from the distant blocks that had felt ignored. Marcus greeted each by name, offering a firm handshake and a warm smile. He introduced them to the artisans and gardeners he had hired to teach skills. "We learn together," he told them, "and we build together." Elena brought out breakfast: warm bread, fresh fruit, and steaming tea. The young apprentices sat at long tables, sharing bread and stories in low voices. Marcus listened as they spoke of hopes and hardships. A girl named Amina said she wanted to learn carpentry to help her single mother. A boy named Luis hoped to paint professionally someday. Marcus saw echoes of his own dreams in their words, and his chest tightened with emotion. By mid-morning, the apprentices split into teams. One group planted a rose garden beside the fountain. Another painted a large wooden door that would stand. At the entrance of the community center, Marcus planned to build. The rest learned basic metalwork from a veteran craftsman. Marcus walked among them, offering advice and encouragement. Every time someone learned a new skill, his heart swelled with hope. In the kitchen, Alina and volunteers prepared a midday meal. The scent of stew and fresh bread drifted through the open windows. Marcus joined them, ladling soup and passing plates. The apprentices lined up to eat, their faces bright with pride at their morning's work. They thanked Marcus with shy smiles. He felt a lump in his throat, remembering how young he had been when he first learned responsibility from his parents. After lunch, the apprentices gathered around the painted door. Luis held a brush trembling in his hand as Marcus knelt beside him and said, "Trust yourself." Luis nodded, dipped his brush, and painted a bright blue bird soaring toward the sky. The rest cheered as he stepped back, his eyes shining. Marcus felt tears rise, but blinked them away, reminding himself that strength came from steady action. As dusk approached, the apprentices planted the final rose bush. Mina placed her hands in the soil and whispered, "For my mother." Stood behind her, feeling the cool earth between his fingers. He remembered his own mother planting daisies at their old home. How love grew from simple acts. Around them, the courtyard glowed golden in the setting sun, petals and paint bright against the fading light. Later, Marcus and Alina stood at the courtyard gate with the apprentices. Looked at their faces, some tired, some elated, but all proud. He spoke softly. "Today you have built more than gardens and doors. You have built trust, skills, and community." The apprentices nodded, some wiping tears. Marcus realized that this work would ripple outward, reaching blocks beyond his gate. When the last student left, Marcus walked the courtyard alone. He traced the lines of the blue bird on the wooden door and felt a fierce joy. The roses would bloom in days and weeks to come, but the kindness and skill planted today would grow for years. He whispered into the evening air, "We grow stronger together," and closed the gate behind him, heart full of promise for tomorrow. Dawn light filtered through the curtains as Marcus woke with a quiet smile. Today was the day the community center would open. He dressed quickly and walked to the front hall, where the painted door with the blue bird stood waiting. Its bright wings seemed to promise flight. Marcus ran his fingertips along the wood and thought of every hand that had helped create it. He felt a warmth in his chest like the morning sun. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the new rose garden. The bushes, still tender, had small buds that promised full bloom in days. Alina arrived with trays of tea and fresh pastries, her smile steady and proud. Together, they unlocked the gate and met the first visitors' neighbors who had worked with the apprentices and those who had watched from afar. Everyone paused at the painted door, their eyes widening at the symbol of hope and unity. Amina and Luis stood to one side, their faces bright. Marcus led them by the shoulders to the door and handed them golden scissors. With a shared breath, they cut the ribbon tight across the frame. Applause rang out as the doors swung open. Inside, the center was simple but welcoming. Tables, chairs, shelves of books, and a corner with tools and art supplies. Marcus felt a lump in his throat, seeing it filled with light. Children ran toward the art corner, where colorful paper and paints waited. A parent hugged Marcus, saying, "Thank you for giving us this gift." He knelt to meet her eyes. "Everyone gave," he said softly, "and together we build." In the main room, elders sat in folding chairs, sharing stories of the old neighborhood. Their laughter echoed off the walls. Marcus realized that this place would hold memories for generations. As the morning wore on, the new security team guided guests kindly through the center. They offered maps, answered questions, and smiled with genuine warmth. Marcus watched them, remembering the night he had relieved his first guards. Now he saw men and women who understood that respect was the true measure of protection. He nodded at Private Allen, who returned the gesture with steady eyes. In the courtyard, the apprentices gave guided tours. They pointed out the rose garden, the mural wall, and the tool shed built with their own hands. Visitors asked questions, and each apprentice answered with quiet confidence. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. These young people had grown so much learning. Not only skills, but trust and pride in their work. He placed a hand on Luce's shoulder. "You did this," he said. Luis beamed. By afternoon, the sun was high and warm. Lena called Marcus to the back lawn, where a long table held a celebration. Lunch. Neighbors brought dishes to share: stews, salads, breads, and sweet treats.
Out?
Marcus helped serve plates, speaking with each guest. He listened to their dreams for the center yoga classes, job workshops, art shows. Every suggestion felt like another seed planted in fertile soil. As the light softened in the late afternoon, Marcus stood at the edge of the lawn and watched families gather beneath the jasmine canopy. Children ran in circles, elders sat in quiet conversation, and apprentices helped carry empty plates. The painted door glowed in the distance, a beacon of hope and unity. Marcus closed his eyes and took a slow breath, feeling gratitude for every step of this journey. When the last guest departed, Marcus and Alina walked hand in hand through the empty center. Marcus touched the painted bird and whispered, "We built more than a building." Alina squeezed his hand. They paused at the open gate, watching the garden's shadows grow long. Marcus felt a deep peace settle over him. In the gentle hush, he knew their work would continue, but for this day, they had created a place where everyone truly belonged.